Hey everyone, I know I'm a little bit late on this devlog, so hopefully I can make it up to you guys by showing you all the stuff that I've done since the last one. It's been a little bit over a month now, but I promise I've been working harder than ever to push out as much content for Sovereign as I can. So without further ado, let's hop into all the changes. So last we left off with the last devlog, I talked about changing the game from forward rendering to deferred rendering. I'm happy to say I've almost fully completed this transition and the game is looking better than ever. Along with this, I finally decided to go through a lot of my placeholder environmental assets and actually update them. So as you can see here, we used to have a lot of old low poly plants and foliage that I've finally gone through and taken the time to make them fit our style and look really good. A lot of these new environmental assets have made the game a lot more beautiful, and I really enjoy just even walking through the forests. I'm still missing things like vines or ivy that can grow on the side of everything. The main challenge I face with this, other than making it fit the style, is how do I want to place all this foliage with relative ease. Whether it's a spline-based system where the vines kind of follow the line that you draw, or a painting-based system where I can just paint it on the side of anything and it places the ivy for me. All of these questions matter when going into creating the asset because how it's placed will actually depict how the model actually looks. Although like 80% of game dev is just planning before actually creating something, because if you didn't plan well enough before making it, chances are you'll have to go back and redo it in the future. So that being said, let's hop into the next part of this devlog. The inventory refactor. Before completely recoding the inventory, it used to have a lot of really bad redundant data. Every item has a data structure filled with data structures for every type of item. So if it was a weapon, it would still have the data structure for armors or consumables, and this can add a lot of memory and it's just really bad practice for a game. So after a really nice talk with one of my community moderators, Gio, he helped show me a really nice way you can do inventory without all that redundant data. So now items that exist in the world are just static meshes. They have no data, no functionality or anything. Every item that gets picked up or used then has what Unreal Engine calls a U object, which is just a really small file that then has all the data and functionality that corresponds with the static mesh in the world. Doing it this way also means when you're messing around with your inventory and pulling things out of chests or trading with other NPCs, instead of copying and pasting the data for one item and placing it somewhere else, you then just pass around a reference to the file that has all the data there, and it's much better for performance. In the end, it's all back-end work that makes it look like the inventory hasn't really changed at all since the last devlog, but at least I can sleep easier knowing it's actually a much better way of coding it. So with the refactor, I was also able to get some new content in with the inventory system. One of the big ones was just randomly generated loot. This is just a normal thing inside just about every open world RPG, but until now my game has not had it. I just have to go in and create a loot table with an item ID and a corresponding rarity, and then I can assign this to any storage container in the world. This method makes it really easy to just add randomly generated loot all across the world that can be different in certain places. And speaking of making loot different, my next favorite thing I've done is what I call weapon characteristics. They're just randomly rolled traits on all your weapons that can make one weapon seem different from almost the exact same weapon. It's a lot like how Destiny does random rolls for their weapons. I love this system because the more casual player can just pick up a weapon and not really care about its traits, but the more hardcore player can really grind to find that perfect version of their favorite weapon. Alright, enough about inventory. I guess we'll talk about mounts next. This really didn't need to be put into the game this early on, but after 2 or 3 weeks of just coding and bug fixing, I wanted to reward myself by making something a lot more fun. This was really challenging at first because I've never done root motion movement, but for the horses I really wanted to encompass that really realistic feeling, and I know that's the best way of doing it. After giving the horses the ability to move and be mounted, the next big thing was to make them seem more intelligent, like you're actually riding a creature, rather than just changing some movement settings and sticking the player on top. To do this, I gave the horse this line that kind of shoots out from in front or behind it based on the direction it's moving and how fast it's going. And it uses the data it collects from this line to decide how it wants to be controlled. So in other words, if you try to take the horse and ram it straight into the wall, it's going to see the wall coming, and it's either going to try to turn or slow down if it finds that it doesn't have a way to get out of whatever obstacle you're trying to hit. If you continuously try to run the horse into the same wall or anything like that, it's going to finally realize what you're doing, and it's just going to back itself up and turn. The reason I put this in was not because I thought players were going to have fun just ramming horses into walls. It's actually there to try to help the player. It makes the horse feel more alive and natural when doing something like running full speed through a forest. The horse will see trees that's coming at it and slightly dodge out of the way as you just hold forward. Also, it helps with having those Skyrim-style mishaps where a horse can just climb up the side of a mountain with ease. Oh, and this whole system works for more than just horses. It's actually a parent class called mounts that you can make a child class of for just about any animal, as long as you know where the player should sit on that animal. There's still a lot of work that needs to go into these horses, like a bunch of saddles, maybe stats for the horses, or even taming or purchasing them. But after a day or two of creating these things, I realized it was probably time to get back on track with my schedule. So I started working on level design. I went through the first town here called Wildebark and fully finished at least the exterior design of the entire town. The interior still needs some work. I went through and created a bunch of new landscape tiles that still need to be filled out, but at least I know they're there and ready to be worked on. I also went through and made a new modular art kit for ruins, so I can go through and place these around, and what's awesome is they'll look really good for dungeons too if I just change some of the colors and maybe add some new assets. Along with the level design, I decided it was about time to start creating some NPCs for the world. I made this handy little tool here that lets me create it almost like a character creator in a normal game. Because creating NPCs is usually just changing data, it's really hard to visually see what the character is going to look like until you get it into the world. So instead I can go through all the options and select them in these drop down lists and change sliders and stuff, and it creates the NPCs right in front of me. That way I know what they're going to look like even before I go back into the world and hit play. Lastly, the combat has had quite a few changes to it. One of the biggest questions I struggled with before is what makes you attack in different directions. Why would you not just find the fastest combo you can do and just always do that throughout the game, and that made it really boring. So I went with the same approach that just about every directional combat system does. You can see the direction that enemies are planning on taking while they're blocking or even attacking now. So now when the player is attacking, you want to try to choose a direction that the enemy is not already choosing. But I get this can be kind of misleading. What stops an enemy from just changing their direction once you begin attacking? So I added ways to fake out your enemy. You can feint the attack in one direction and then attack in a complete opposite direction. This made the combat system a lot more skillful and fun to play, adding a lot more outplay potential against your enemy. The next thing was allowing the player to parry an attack. So now just choosing the correct direction is just a normal block, and you have to hit your attack button the same time that they hit you, and it does this kind of shield bash animation I created. This will stun the enemy, giving you a chance to counterattack and start up your own combo and feint. But this made the combat system really hard, and that's the next thing I need to solve. Some of the animations are just too quick and don't have enough build up to the attacks, making it almost impossible to guess the direction that the AI is going to attack. And sadly, I've already wasted a lot of time trying to learn how to animate before I realized I'm just not that good at it. So I'm trying to find other solutions to adding build up to attacks, or at least slowing them down without making them look weird or needing to adjust the animation. Like just about every indie dev out there, I just don't have the money to hire a professional animator, so we have to come up with more creative solutions to these problems. But with all these changes to the combat system, I find it a lot more enjoyable as you have a lot more options when engaging in the combat. Alright, that about wraps it up for this devlog. There's still a lot more that's been done, but I gotta keep at least some secrets from you guys so I can surprise you when the game actually comes out. Before I go, I would like to say thanks to a community moderator named Clammy, we are really active on Twitter, so don't forget to follow us there for a lot of updates for the game and behind the scenes information. Also, in case you haven't already, don't forget to stop by our live streams on Twitch if you want to see the game being created in real time. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to stay updated here on YouTube for the next devlog. And finally, thank you so much to my Patreons. Again, I say this at the end of every devlog, but I really do mean it. You guys are the reason that the game has made this much progress. I seriously cannot thank you guys enough. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.